right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time, and we do have quite a few groups joining us for the first time on YouTube, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, recently, we wrapped up our biggest February ever. 80 programs with incredible women from across the globe. I think we broadcast from 27 countries, which is madness. So thank you so much for joining us on YouTube live as we celebrated such incredible people from across this planet. So we're diving with March. It's a bit of a quieter month for us, which is pretty exciting. A chance to rest, relax, kick back, only do 35 live broadcasts in 1 month. And I'm really appreciative that all you guys continue to join us. Hopefully all our kids are back in the classroom soon. Looks like we've got some really positive news in that direction. So today we are joined live by someone who has been joining us for over the last 6-8 months now. It's been really exciting. The Duke Lemur Center has been a big partner of ours. We've done a whole bunch of programs with them, showcasing their work around the planet. That is the requisite video call, phone call in the background. It has to happen in every broadcast, so apologies for that. We're joined live by Karie Whitman. So she has done a few fossil preparation, amazing programs where she's chipping away fossils, things that no human being has ever seen before, which is really exciting. Today, she's going to dive into her broader career and about finding your STEM interests. A lot of us as classrooms will know science, technology, engineering, and math. STEM is a really big term nowadays, and she's going to explore some of the roles that she's had in communicating and doing science in the field, in the lab, and beyond. I'm really excited for today's talk. I hope you guys are too. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Karie to blow our minds. Karie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. Hopefully you can see me, and then in a minute we'll get to my screen. But I just wanted to talk to you guys today about all of the interesting things that I get to do for my job here at the Lemur Center, and a little bit about how I came to be doing all of these cool things. So I just want to note also, I am in my office with the door closed, so I'm not wearing a mask, but I do have it. So if you guys ask me questions later and we go look at some fossils, I will put this on. Okay. So Jesse, I guess we can start the...
We're all set. I got your presentation up. We're good to go.
Oh, great. Okay. So that's me. That's some cool illustrations. So here at the Lemur Center, I do a lot of things. I am first and foremost a fossil preparator. That means I work with the fossils, and I'll explain a little bit about that as we go through the talk. And then I also am a researcher. I've done research on agriculture in Madagascar and about the environment. And I'm also now a science illustrator. So all of these little cool illustrations that you see on the screen here with me are things that I made. So, boom. Science, technology, engineering, and math. I'm sure all of you know a little bit about STEM, and there are so many ways to be in STEM because the science, technology, engineering, and math are not all separate, distinct things. They blend together a lot too, so there's really so many jobs that you could have when you grow up in STEM. And it's important to remember too that not everybody's career path is in a straight line. Some people do know when they're little that they want to be a specific job, like a doctor, and then they grow up to be that, and that's awesome. But a lot of us too sort of wander a little bit before we find what we really like, and that's okay. And so I just want you guys to all think about things that you like to do and how they might relate to STEM. So like if you like doing puzzles, that's sort of STEM related, that's problem solving, and you're paying attention to the details to put something together. Things like robots and Legos, if you're building or you're working with mechanics or electricity, anything like that, those are all STEM hobbies. Outer space, that would be physics, nature, so that's biology and things with animals and plants. So really lots of hobbies that you guys might like to do when you're in your free time. They have some things that they share with STEM careers. And so it's a good thing to start thinking about, like, what do I like to do and how might I incorporate that into my education and my job? Boop-a-doop. Okay, so when I was little, I lived in this place, which is in Michigan. So we lived by the woods and by a pond. So I loved spending lots of time outside, and I loved looking for frogs and caterpillars and all of those things. And so when I would watch TV, I would watch a lot of animal things like National Geographic. I loved learning about environments and places where animals live and all of the interesting things they do, like this computer game from the 1990s called Sammy's Science House, where you can click on all the animals and see what they're doing in all of the seasons. So that's where my interest in STEM started, was just with nature. And so when I got into high school, I sort of tried to follow that interest, and I really liked biology, and I really liked earth science. And so I just was taking the science classes that I thought would be interesting to try them out, to see which ones were my favorite and which things I felt I was good at or that I could understand. So it's good for all of you to think about, what is your favorite subject in school? It doesn't have to be science, it can be anything, but just think about why you like that subject and what kinds of jobs you could do in the future with that. It's also okay if something doesn't come naturally to you. These are all new things. There's lots of complex topics and a lot of math and physics and all kinds of science, but it's just important to know that you can practice. You can always ask your teacher for extra help, and lots of people take a long time to learn some of these things. And I also want to say that sometimes STEM can transform into STEAM, where we add art and things like music. And a lot of those activities can help you be creative and practice your creativity, so that when you have to solve a complex problem, you can think more outside the box. Also, so there's so many kinds of jobs, and sometimes as a student or as a kid, it's kind of hard to know all of the jobs that are out there. And so when I was growing up, I also bounced around a lot of ideas in my head. I was like, what can I be? Maybe an eye doctor, maybe a chemist, maybe a marine scientist. I bounced around all of these things. I even took an aptitude test in 8th grade that told me I should be a taxidermist, which is really funny because fossil preparator is actually not that far off. So I ended up in a good spot. Also, something that is good about today in modern technology is that you can use Google and things like Science Twitter and programs like this, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, to see what all kinds of scientists and STEM people are doing all over the world. There's a lot of cool projects, and there's a lot of cool jobs that you might not think about. So it's good to get into all of those too. Okay, so when I got to college, I was still sort of following my interests. I really liked nature and ecology. So a major in college is your focus area of study. And when I got to college, I thought I might want to do what they call pre-med, which is take all of the classes that you would need to go to medical school to become a doctor. And there are a lot of different majors that you can do to prepare you to be a doctor. And so that's what I started out doing. But something really cool happened early on when I was a freshman in college. I had an amazing opportunity to do a work study position in a lab with fossils. And so this is a picture of me working with the head of a giant whale. I've got a picture coming up next about this. It's called Basilosaurus. But so I was able to work in this lab for money during college, which is awesome. And I got a lot of really cool experience working with fossils. So that's something worth looking for too. When and if you decide to go to college, you can look for work study jobs or places in labs where you can practice or volunteer and just get to know some other STEM opportunities. Also, it's really important to try to talk to people like professors and academic advisors, because maybe they also know about jobs that you could be good at that you don't know about yet. And so asking for advice, and then going and trying to do a study abroad experience or some field research. All of these things are really cool and really important in finding your STEM career path. You got to try lots of things and see what you like and see what sticks. And so I kept doing both of these things. I did paleontology and fossil stuff, but I also did ecology and environment stuff, and I liked both of them. So that's just what I held on to. Real quick, here's Basilosaurus. It was 60 to 70 feet long. It lived between 41 and 34 million years ago. It was found in Egypt. So my first ever project, the reason that I was able to get a work study job was because we had to make a copy of this whole Basilosaurus to hang up in a museum, which takes a lot of work and a lot of hands. So I was helping work on making the museum copy of that. Okay, so I'm going to explain a little bit about my path and tell you all about fossil preparation and Madagascar research and then some science illustration, and then you guys can ask me any kinds of questions. So, like I said, I was very interested in ecology and environment, and so I continued to follow that path a little bit, but I also, for all of my college experience, I worked in a paleontology lab. And so I followed both of these things. So the next steps for me, I did AmeriCorps, which is kind of a cool program where after college, it's sort of volunteer, but sort of a job. And it helps you get cool experience helping things here in America. So I got to inform people about invasive species that are around lakes in Michigan. And then after that, I was hired as a fossil preparator in Ohio, where I worked on similar fossils of primates and things, but just a little bit different. And then, okay, let's talk about that first. I'm going to explain to you what a fossil preparator is. Boom, fossils. Fossils go through so many stages from when we find them to when you can see them in a museum. And first we have to find them. So paleontologists and geologists, that's the scientists that study rocks, we work together to look at old maps and things that tell us what kind of rocks are where and what kind of mountains and rivers and how old the rocks are in those places. And we can find the fossils that are in the rocks there. Hold on, I just want to check. Jesse, everything's good, right?
We are humming along. It's great.
Okay, great. I couldn't hear anything, and I just wanted to make sure.
No, I know. It's awkward talking to a screen for half an hour. No worries. You're doing great.
Okay, great. So we'll look at geological maps with the geologists and find places where we might be able to see rocks from 25 million years ago, if that's where we're looking. And then we can go out and scout around and see what kind of fossils we can find in the rock layers there. And once we find those fossils, we can take them out of the rock with some hammers and some ice picks and get them in these little chunks like this. And then we wrap them up in toilet paper to protect them on the journey. And we'll bring them back to a lab. Sometimes we surround them in plaster like this just so we can keep them all nice and safe because the fossils were in the rock for a really long time, millions of years. And so taking them out of the rock makes them a little bit fragile. So we'll wrap them up and keep them safe, and then we'll bring them to the lab. And then somebody who is me, the fossil preparator, uses a lot of different tools and microscopes and types of glue and things to get the fossil out of the rock. So we'll brush away the rock little by little until we can see the whole fossil. And as we go, we'll add glue to it, drop some plastic dissolved in acetone in there, and it'll harden up the fossil. And then it'll be ready for scientists to study it. We can also make copies. We can also scan the fossils so people can see it on a computer without having to hold it in their hand. And the copies are really important to put up in museums so everybody can see the fossil and we don't have to worry about it breaking. Yay! So here is an example of a big fossil on display in a museum. That's Megalatopus. It's a big extinct type of lemur. And so after we study the fossils and we make copies and we've got our scans and everything, depending on where the fossils are from, we may return them. If they're from America, they can stay here in a museum here. But sometimes we keep them in collections. There's lots of cool things that can happen to fossils after we get them out and study them. So here's an example. This is a real fossil. This is a skull, so you can see his eyes. This is a primate, and I'll show you that in a second. So just to recap, we like to take all of the rock off of the fossil so we can see it and see what its shape is, and if it has teeth, what kind of teeth does it have, and all of those things that tell us about how the animal lived when it was alive. And we need to make it clean and stable so people can hold it, and then we'll make a copy. So here is a little video sped up of me getting the rock away slowly from this skull. And that is my tool. That's called an air scribe. It's like a little jackhammer, and it vibrates and blows so I can get rock away. So in this video, I'm sort of separating off this big chunk of rock that we don't really need, so I can start getting closer to the skull. And I'll work like this for many hours until we get the fossil out. And how long it takes really depends on the size of the fossil and the kind of rock that it's in and how fragile it is. So even a tiny fossil might take me a long time if the bone is really fragile. Whoop. Okay, and this is the animal that it is. So we call it a lemur-like primate. That's actually from Wyoming, which is really cool. So there were primates in North America between 52 and 47 million years ago. And we call them lemur-like just because of the morphology, the shape of the bones, and what kind of teeth they had, like how they lived in the environment was very like a lemur, even though they are not distinctly related to the lemurs that are living today. But we do also in the DLC at the Lemur Center Fossil Division, we've got extinct lemurs. So this is Megalatopus. It was big. Paleopropithecus was a lemur that was kind of like a sloth, like to hang around like this. And we've got extinct other animals from Madagascar too, like elephant birds, really huge with an egg the size of my head, a little hippo, and a fossa, which is the predator, but there used to be a bigger one. And then we've got this eagle. So, okay, I have talked to you a little bit about being a fossil preparator. And so while I was working as a fossil preparator in Ohio, I also decided that I would go back to school. So after you go to college, you have the option to get a graduate degree, which is a master's degree or a doctorate. And it can be in anything, really. There's all kinds of fields that you could get a higher degree in. And so I decided that I was going to enroll to get my master's in environmental studies. And my boss at the time, when I was working as a fossil preparator, used to do research in Madagascar. So that is how I ended up being able to do research on agriculture in Madagascar. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Yay! So something that we all know and love about Madagascar is all of the cool biodiversity. So that means there's lots of interesting types of animals and plants and bugs. And so everything that you see here is just from one protected area. That is where I studied in Madagascar. So there's 13 types of lemurs. So we've got 1, 2, and 11 others. The Indri is really big and fluffy and cool, and it likes to sing to its to mark its territory, and it's super loud. And then we've got all kinds of cool birds. This little guy that's called a tenrec. It has little sharp teeth for eating bugs. And then we've got frogs, chameleons, lots of cool butterflies and moths. And my favorite, the giraffe weevil that looks like a long-necked giraffe. And then we've got cool orchids, plants, everything. And so this is just in one tiny spot of Madagascar. So you can imagine the entire island has a lot more stuff on it, and lots of forests too. And so that is why there are so many protected areas in Madagascar. And they really go all the way around. So it's important to protect the habitat for these often endangered animals, but also ecology will tell us that everything on the planet is part of a bigger system and everything is connected in some way or another. So all of the animals like the lemurs and chameleons and bugs, they all depend on the environment, and the environment grows in the soil that is impacted by the life, and then humans are a big part of that too. So humans also need to live with the environment and with the animals and make sure that they can get enough food to live and feed their families. And so in Madagascar, that's also the case. So somebody living near a forest in Madagascar will probably need resources from the forest and from the earth to build houses and to find space to farm. Rice is a really important thing for a lot of farmers in Madagascar. And of course, they need water, which the forest helps keep water in the area. I'll take a drink of water right now. Okay, so the rice farmers, it's really important that when we are protecting forests, that we make sure that the people that live there, that have lived there for a really long time, also have access to the forest and they have everything that they need to live. So what I did is I went to Madagascar to interview a lot of rice farmers and to see what techniques they would use to grow their rice and how that interacted with the forests and with conservation efforts. This is my guide, Nina. He is local to the area, and that was super important because I learned a lot about the culture from him. And also he was really helpful in helping me learn how to speak Malagasy, which was a crucial part of doing interviews with the farmers. Malagasy, by the way, is the native language of Madagascar. And so it's interesting because a lot of the techniques that are more productive from a science perspective for rice are better, and some of them were developed in open, really flat areas like this where it's sort of easier to grow rice. But a lot of the people in Maramaza live in really hilly places, and so there's really tiny little valleys that they can use to grow their rice. So the techniques that work on a big open flat place like this wouldn't necessarily work as well in a place like Maramaza, and that's really important to consider when you're trying to do conservation and helping with livelihood projects in the areas near the forests. So something that might be more helpful in Maramaza is doing things that work with the hillside landscape, and so you can grow rice at the bottom here, but then you can grow sort of like different crops all the way up and fruit trees, lots of other things to sort of diversify the types of food that you can eat. Yay, okay. So I was able to go to Madagascar several times, and I spent a total of a year and a half living there, which gave me a lot of cool context about Madagascar and the environment, which relates really well to the type of fossils that I work with now. And also, while I was doing my master's, I got to take a course in infographics, which was super helpful and just really fun for me to do, showing me how to make infographics. And infographics, as it seems, is information plus graphics. So it's just a way to demonstrate some information that's easier for people to understand a little bit. Maybe the pictures help. And you can see with the images what kind of data they're trying to present. So this is one that I made for my research, where SRI is a type of rice agriculture. And so sometimes people didn't hear about it. Sometimes people did hear about it, but they didn't try it yet. Sometimes people tried it and then they quit because it wasn't working for them. And then sometimes people still used it. So that was one of my first things that I made after I learned how to use Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator is a cool kind of program that you can use to make illustrations, which is mostly what I use. And this is the first ever thing in the class that I took. They gave us this empty fish, and we had to trace all of these little lines with a certain tool in the program and then color it. So I made this cool, colorful fish and this little mystery frog over here holding a lantern just for fun. So then I was able to keep practicing a lot and make a lot of cool infographics that we can use here at the Duke Lemur Center with some of our exhibits that we're creating to help people know about how we find fossils and what kind of fossils we have. And so maybe a lot of you have learned a little bit about rocks, about sandstone. And so over a long, long time, rocks get lifted up and eroded away, and sometimes bones get trapped in there and they become fossils after a long time, and then we can find them once the erosion happens again. I also can do things like we try to reconstruct what some of our extinct animals may have looked like. So for example, this is an ancestor of the ii, and it sort of looked like a galago, which are animals that are alive today in Africa. So I sort of tried to make it look like a galago a little bit, but a little bit more ii-like. And then for this other ancestor that's a little bit younger, I sort of went in middle ground and tried to make it look a little bit like a galago, a little bit like an ii. And that's just sort of a best guess of what we think some of these animals maybe looked like. Yay! Okay, so I've explained to you a little bit about all of the kinds of jobs that I do here and how I got there just by following my interests in school and in college and following the opportunities that I had along the way. So I think I'd like you guys to be able to ask me some questions. It can be about anything because I'm in the fossil lab, so we can look at fossils, or you can ask me about Madagascar or about illustration or about anything.
Fantastic. Well, Karie, what a fun presentation that was. And by the way, the infographic thing definitely paid off. Not only did we get to see your first ones, but all that presentation was so much fun to look at as well as listen to. So awesome. By the way, we've got tons of kids. We've got Alabamans, Texans, Ontarians, Floridians, New Yorkers, Californians, and South Carolinians. I don't know, one of those state names. I think I did pretty good with that, though. We have so many groups tuning in. Our live groups, YouTube, welcome in. One class in particular has asked, I think, 20 questions on YouTube already, so you guys are super keen. Way to go, everybody. All our groups, so our teachers typing in the chat bar that are live, you don't need to. The only one who needs to do that is Miss Anthony's class, but their devices aren't working. Everyone else, I will come to you live in just a second. And we are going to start with Miss Plant's grade 6s. Karie, too, if you want to exit screen share so you can see us, go ahead and do that.
Yes, I would love to do that.
Miss Plant's class, come on in and kick us off with a question. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Yeah, here you go. Hi, guys. Oh, you'll need to come closer to the computer. We can't hear you from that far back.
Really loud.
How many years did it take to do what you're doing now?
How many years did it take to get to where you are now?
Great question. So when I was in college, I spent the 4 years of college doing learning how to be a fossil preparator just on the side as my work study job. So I count those 4. And then after that, I did 1 year where I was in AmeriCorps, volunteering and doing environmental stuff around Michigan. And then I was hired in Ohio to do more fossil stuff. And I was there for a total of 5 years. But 3 of those, I was also working on my master's degree. So I was doing both working and studying for my master's degree. And then after those 5 years, so we're at 9 now because I did 4 in college and 5 after. Oh, wait, 6 after. Okay, we're at about 10 years now. And then I spent a year in Madagascar, so about 11 years.
So I want to stress for our students, because I know when I was in grade 6 and grade 5, this prospect of like getting to grade 12 and doing all this extra work after that was like terrifying. But honestly, you get to end up in a position where you're pretty young by the time you're done this. You're mid-20s, maybe late 20s at the very latest, which again seems really far off, but is really young in the scheme of things. And now you're in a position to do things that you absolutely love for the rest of your life, where it doesn't feel like work. It's really fulfilling. It's exciting. You get to do exactly what you want. And so it might seem daunting now when you're actually there once you finish grade 12. And if you head off to university or college after that, there's so many doors that open up because of that experience. And I think that we hear that a lot from a lot of our speakers. So just keep that in mind. Great question, guys, to kick us off.
Yes.
Miss Gallant's class, you guys are our awesome 3s today. So if you want to come on in Guelph, just unmute your microphone and you are good to go. 3 4s.
Hi there. Thanks for sharing your journey with us. It's really neat to see how you can build all of your strengths into a future career. We have a lot of questions in here. I'm going to go to Noah because he's sitting nice and close. Do you want to come up, Noah?
Hello.
How many fossils have you dug out in all your years?
Oh, great question. So I work with a lot of really small fossils. So the answer is probably thousands by now. Some of them are really tiny, like so tiny that you need a microscope to see them. And some are a little bit bigger, like less than the size of my hand. So through while I was in college, I didn't get out that many because I was mostly making copies of the fossils for the museum. But in my 5 years that I was a preparator in Ohio, I probably got thousands out of rock, and most of them were tiny.
Very neat, guys. Thanks, Miss Gallant's class. Thanks, Noah. So before we go to Miss Hurtado's class in just a minute, I want to take one from Miss Anthony's. They're joining us at Springbrook Elementary in California, and they want to know, are lemurs the main animal that you study, or is there something else that's just as much or even more so?
Yeah, so a lot of the fossils that we have here at the DLC, the Duke Lemur Center, are related to just the story of primates in general. So lemurs are included in primates, but also we're really curious about how primates evolved generally. How did we get things like the really old lemur-like primate in Wyoming, and things like monkeys and apes and eventually humans. But we also have lots of fossils of every kind of thing here. So we've got things that eat plants, like big elephant ancestors. We've got bats and turtles and all kinds of things.
Yeah. Fantastic. You showed a bunch of pictures of those things. And people, if you get a chance to look up Madagascar's ancient wildlife and current wildlife, Karie and I share a love for giraffe-necked weevils. They are the coolest bug on this planet.
Yes.
So oh, there we go. We got a drawing one. That's something that is. That's hilarious. Awesome. Let's head to Fort Worth, Texas, Mr. Hurtado's class. If you guys want to come on in, just demute your mic and you are good to go. Guys.
Here they go. Look. Can you speak in the Madagascar language?
Yeah, did you ask, can I speak the language in Madagascar?
Yep.
Yes, I can. So it's called Malagasy, and the roots of the language are sort of from Indonesia, Polynesia, Malaysia area, because some of the Malagasy ancestors are from there, but also some African languages are included in the roots. And as an example, the thing behind me is a cool type of fabric that a lot of people have in Madagascar, and on it says Saramandrusu Saramiverna, which means essentially, if you go away somewhere, good luck on your journey and come home safe.
Nice. What a nice message. That's a Lamba, right?
A Lambawani, yes.
Lovely. Very cool. All right, Miss Cottrell's class. I know you typed a question in the chat bar. It just got answered. So they're joining us in Baldwinsville, New York. If you want to unmute your mic and take a question, I know there's some tech difficulties with you earlier, so I will come in and check, and hopefully we're good to go.
Okay. So we do have some questions ready to go. Go ahead, Kaylee.
Hey, Kaylee.
Have you found any dinosaur bones?
Ooh, any dinosaur bones, Karie?
Myself, I maybe have only found like some dinosaur eggshells, but I've worked on a couple of dinosaur fossils, not super that many, because mostly what I work on is mammal fossils and things that are younger than the dinosaurs.
Yeah, cool question, guys. Thank you so much for that. They've been waiting patiently for some time now. We're going to go to Coral Reef Elementary in Miami with Miss Diaz's class. If you guys want to come on up, go for it. Hey, Miss Diaz.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're perfect.
Awesome. Okay, I have two questions for you. One of the kids wanted to know, what was the test that you took that would tell you what you were going to be when you grew up? And the other, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So just in 8th grade, we had a day where they had us go to the library and use the library computers. And it was just some kind of assessment. They call it an aptitude test. That helped us think of areas that we might like to work in. And so some of that, they said I would be good at doing research, but one of the top jobs they told me is taxidermist, which is somebody who works with dead animals. So not far.
Right. Not far from where you are.
Right.
And then the other question they had was, what was the biggest fossil that you've worked with? Was it the one that you showed us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was that big ancient whale that is between 41 and 34 million years old that was found in Egypt. So yeah, that was the biggest one.
Very cool. Thanks, Miss Diaz. By the way, whale evolution is some of the most charted in history. Like, there is such a beautiful gradation of fossils throughout the entire history of whales. They started looking sort of like dogs, which is kind of cool. So you can see this very, very readily at a lot of museums around the world. They've been highlighting whale evolution. So if you guys ever get the chance, do check that out. All right, I'm going to take a few from YouTube, because we've got so many from YouTube, and then we'll come back to our live classes in just a minute. So Miss Henderson's class, they're joining us in Ottawa. They have a ton of questions. Carlos and Ethan, grade 3 students, want to know, what's the first fossil you ever saw? First thing you ever dug out of the rock personally?
Ooh, the first fossil I ever saw. Well, we could say there's one that I first saw in the lab, which is probably that whale again. But the first one that I ever found, like when I was out helping look for fossils, probably was a backbone of a fish. There are a lot. And one of the places that we looked, there was a riverbed, an old riverbed. So a lot of the fossils that we found were like tiny little pieces of fish, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's a fish from 25 million years ago. So very nice.
What's really cool about fossils, I mean, we all think of these big dinosaur bone beds in these incredible places, Montana, China, Alberta. But I mean, most places on this planet, you can go and find fossils. It might be small things. It might be things like fish vertebrae or little tiny shells. I mean, I'm here in Toronto, and you can crack open shale in the rivers of Toronto and find little fossils of trilobites and things, which is really, really cool. So hopefully all our students get that chance one day. All right,
Yes.
Mr. Shattuck's class, Morgan, who's in grade 7 in Chalk River, Ontario, she wants to know, is there a closest living relative to this Basilosaurus that you've been showing with us?
Ooh, the closest living relative to Basilosaurus. I think it's hard to say because cetaceans is the group that includes all of the whales and dolphins and things like that. So I don't know that one whale would be closer than the other, but any type of whale, really.
Yeah, if anything, it would be an ancestor to a lot of modern whales, and it's very hard to trace something being 40 million years back. If it's actually a direct ancestor or something that's split off, that's a really hard thing to sort of parse out in the fossil record. I think people get a sense that there are way more fossils than there are. I know I just said that there's so many around the world, but if you took all the Basilosaurus fossils ever found, it probably wouldn't fill a garbage truck. I mean, it's not a lot of actual material. I know all the human fossils ever found, like all those, Turkana Boy and Lucy, like it's like the back of like a pickup truck. They could fall in there, which is wild. I mean, most things don't fossilize, so building up these stories of what led to what is really hard to do. Good question, Morgan.
Right.
All right. Miss Wu's class joining us in Houston. Miss Wu and Mr. Shattuck join us all the time. It is so nice to have them here so readily. So thank you to both of those classes. Do you have a favorite fossil find? No pressure.
A favorite fossil find? When I had the opportunity to go look for fossils, one of my friends, Eric, did find a very cool rodent jaw. And we were all really excited because at the time we didn't know what kind of jaw it was, but it's just very exciting to see a jaw fossil in general. So we were all really excited about that.
Very cool. It's kind of rare to have someone who can actually pick an answer for that. So thank you, Karie. Bell's class does need to go in a minute. So we'll just say a big thank you and goodbye to them. Welcome in and thanks for coming in to New York, guys. Really, really great to have you guys here with us today. All right, I'm going to take one more quick one from YouTube, and then we will go back to our live groups. Let's see. Libby in Auburn, Alabama. She wants to know, it's the biggest fossil you have at the DLC. In one of your cupboards in the back. Anything huge?
Ooh. Yes, and actually, this is a good time. I just want to show you guys some of the cool stuff that we've got out there.
Cool.
So just hold on a second. Got my mask on because COVID is still among us. And, ooh, there's my Malagasy flag, by the way, right there. Okay, so if we're coming out here, I'm going to take you guys. We've got a lot of cabinets. Got a lot of cool things over here. There's a Megaladopus. There's some big guys over here. So let's see. I think that is, yep, that's a hippo. So we've got a hippo in here. Skull is upside down. You can see the teeth. That looks like another one. We've got all of these big kind of bones. This one is mostly rock. So that is a project that I still have to work on. And you can see there's a little bit of fossil right here in the corner. So we don't have anything super huge here at the DLC, but things that are pretty big, bigger than your head. And the animals certainly were.
Very, very cool. I love seeing fossils live. We don't get a chance to do that very often. So every time we get this chance to go behind the scenes, it is super neat, especially now when it's kind of hard to go on some field trips. And we've been having a lot of people excited about your presentation because it sort of fills that void that actual in-person field trips would fill normally. So thank you. Miss Plant, you just asked about getting one of your students in. They can come in on StreamYard if they're having trouble on YouTube, so please do just use that link and have them come in. Speaking of Miss Plant, I'm going to come back to you guys for a question, so if you have another one for us, come on in.
Guys, speak nice and loudly, okay?
I want to know is
So Miss Plant, can you repeat that for us? Sorry.
Nice and loud, louder.
what I want to know is what is the weirdest fossil you've ever found, and what is your favorite fossil in your life?
Okay.
So, you heard it?
I heard what is the something fossil I've ever found?
Yeah. So weirdest or largest fossil you've worked on, and then what's your in the collection while you're back in that room? Can you show us one of your favorite fossils?
Cool.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to show you one of my favorites first because that's sort of why I came back here. And this is the one that you saw me doing earlier in the presentation, but it's all free now. It's out of the rock. And we kept some of the rock inside of the eyes here just so its skull doesn't collapse in on itself. And here under, you can see all of the teeth. So this one is super cool, and it's just really sturdy and really pretty. So this is one of my favorites. And then for the weirdest, you know, you wouldn't expect a lot of, there's so many kinds of fish just in general and in the history of the earth that sometimes when you find a fish bone, you have no clue what it, like they just look so strange and so weird sometimes. And sometimes it goes through like, maybe it's a frog, maybe it's a lizard, maybe it's a bird, you know, like people misidentify fish fossils all the time just because they look so weird.
Yeah. I'm going to try and find a picture. I'm going to try and find the name of like the coolest shark fossil of all time for you guys while Carrie's talking. Maybe you know it offhand. It's the one with the like curly jaw. What is he called? I'm going to find it. We're going to, if people are looking for weird fossils, it's like the weirdest fossil. I just love it.
Yeah.
Miss Gallant's class, our awesome class. You guys, again, you've been living up to it, which is very exciting. So come on back in, and then Miss Diaz can wrap us up in just a minute. Hi, guys.
Awesome. All right. We have Theo. There he is.
Hello.
I'm wondering what's your favorite lemur?
Ooh, my favorite lemur. So the one I mentioned in part of the presentation, it's black and white. It looks like a teddy bear. It's got fluffy ears, and it's really big. It's called Indri, I-N-D-R-I. And it's my favorite because, here, I'll do an impression. They go, and they sing like that in the trees, and you can hear them from very far away, and it's super cool.
I was going to suggest that people go online to listen to the Indri call when they're done, but you just nailed it. Like, no one needs to listen to an Indri anymore. They are very, very cool, though. I had the chance to go to Madagascar myself and hear them in person. It's one of the most amazing things you will ever hear in person in your life. So, so cool. I don't think they're in zoos very often because they're so rare. And
they can't survive in captivity. Yeah. Right. So that's why it's really important to conserve the environment and the trees out there.
You'll have to head to Madagascar to check them out, guys. I found the name of the fossil, Helicoprion. Coolest fossil ever. Go online when you're done, Helicoprion, and you can watch this video on YouTube. It'll blow your mind, okay? Like, the thing should not exist. There's just no way. It's so cool.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Awesome. All right, let's wrap up in Miami, where we all wish we were. Miss Diaz's class, come on in and wrap us up.
Okay. So somebody wanted to know, what is your favorite part of your job? Would it be digging up the actual fossils or working on them and taking away all the extra rock?
Ooh. I think my favorite part is actually taking away the rock because I get to work under the microscope that I've got over here. And sometimes it's just really relaxing. It's like doing a coloring book. But you're getting a fossil out of the rock. And then it's like a puzzle because you can put all the pieces back together, and it's just really satisfying to do. So I think that's my favorite part of fossil stuff. And then I also really like doing the illustrations for the exhibits just because it's a good creative outlet for me. And I like knowing that I can help people understand concepts that are a little bit difficult to grasp sometimes.
Yeah. What a fantastic answer. And again, for our students today, live and on YouTube, it's been such a pleasure to highlight so many different ways of approaching STEM careers, all the different things that can lead into a really fulfilling and exciting job. So I know you guys loved it with all your questions. So thank you so much to all our viewers around the world, really. And Karie, this was so much fun. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was really fun to be here. And I also just want to mention that March 8th is International Women's Day, which a lot of the women in Madagascar celebrate too. So that's good to remember. Celebrate women.
Coming up soon, guys. Well, thank you so, so much. What we do at the end of every one of our broadcasts, as you know, Karie, I'm going to bring in all our students. So Miss Plant, Miss Gallant's class, Miss Diaz, if you want to join me in saying a big thank you and farewell to Karie today, all in, go for it.